A Trump-Biden rematch seeming all but certain tonight as primary races are called across the country. At this hour, President Biden has been declared the winner in 13 Democratic races. 11 GOP contests have been called for former President Trump, including Colorado. The Supreme Court ruled yesterday he could not be removed from the ballot.
With more from the election night party of Steve Garvey, we are joined by LA Times political writer Seema Mehta. Seema, it's good to have you, and I especially love that you look like one of our Fox 11 reporters tonight. Thanks for being with us. Let's start with you analyzing
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Analyzing the presidential race, particularly for Nikki Haley. Do you expect her to drop out of the race tonight officially? And also, what's next for her?
I mean, the math hasn't looked good for her for quite some time, and she's been pretty adamant that she's going to, keep on going. That said, a lot of the big donors who were backing her have backed away. Some of the outside groups that were really providing the infrastructure for her campaign have backed away. The question is she waiting to see what happens with former President Trump, what happens with some of his legal issues, and what happens before the convention? Because if his nomination somehow gets derailed, which doesn't look possible at the moment, then is she trying to be an alternative that could come up at the convention? So while the math really does not look good for her, she has been pretty adamant, even when she was losing state after state, that she was going to keep going.
She was supposed to potentially speak tonight in South Carolina. Now we're being told that there isn't going to be a speech tonight in South Carolina. She doesn't have any events planned tomorrow in any of the future states. So there are a lot of tea leaves that seem to indicate that she may be preparing to drop out, but we haven't gotten that official word yet. Just real quickly, Seema, isn't it amazing, though, that 70% of the country doesn't want there to be a Trump-Biden rematch. 86% of the country says that Joe Biden is too old. And yet the two of them are killing it in every election. Nobody's coming close to them. There's this huge disconnect.
Right. I mean, I think, there's unhappiness among members of both parties with their presumptive nominees. But that said, when you ask people, who would you like instead, there's no consensus in either side. And I think that's what has led to both of them having so much strength.
Okay, well, given that you are at the party, the headquarters of Steve Garvey, he's not there yet. He's expected to be there sometime between 9 and 10 o'clock, where he put out on his social media that he will give some election night remarks. He has most certainly run a very unconventional race, really no spending, no events this past weekend. He's done very few interviews, except mostly with Alex. Yet he could, and Seema, and you, of course, he could very well make the top two. What do you make of his strategy?
It's a combination of his strategy as well as his luck, because Adam Schiff, the Democrat who looked like the front runner, has really put in so much money. Schiff, as well as his allies, have put in millions and millions of dollars advertising about Steve Garvey. Ostensibly, it's to criticize him for his past support of Trump, for being conservative. That said, they've spent money in places like Fox News. They were clearly, doing the strategy to elevate his name ID among Republican voters, because they knew that if they get a Republican in the top two, given the state's Democratic tilt, Adam Schiff will have a much easier path to election in November than if he was facing Katie Porter, his main other Democratic rival.
So what's the smart thing to look at for tonight if Katie Porter is able to pull this off? What does that coalition look like? What does that number look like?
Right. Well, I know you were talking about voter turnout earlier, and turnout has been it's been pretty low so far. We don't know what's happened today, but she really needed younger voters, voters of color, to turn out, because that was really part of her coalition that that's backed her. And in the earlier turns, they really hadn't been returning their ballots. That said, this is the first election, the first presidential primary election, where every Californian who's a registered voter received a ballot in the mail. So people could have been dropping their ballots off today at drop boxes. They could be going to vote in person today. So we haven't really seen this scenario before. So even while the turnout really hasn't looked really great for her, we really won't know until we know what happened today.
And that's exactly what she said when she turned in her own ballot with her son. He voted for the first time over the weekend. She said the very same thing. It's hard to tell when there's low voter turnout like this. Okay, Seema, we appreciate you. Enjoy yourself among the Garvey supporters there in Palm Desert, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Check out her work at LATimes.com. We'll be right back with more coverage after this.